Now let's begin. Ryan Daniel gripped the steering wheel as he navigated through the midday traffic, his mind already on the evening shoot. The documentary on underground music venues wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well enough, and more importantly, it kept him close to home. Close to Jamie, his 4-year-old son whose laugh could turn the worst day around. His phone buzzed. Karen's name lit up the screen. "Hey, babe," he answered, wedging the phone between his shoulder and ear. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. The hospital called me in early. Some kind of emergency with the scheduling system." His wife's voice carried that familiar tension she got when work pulled her away from family time. As a surgical nurse, Karen Mackenzie Daniel lived at the mercy of emergencies. "I know you have that location scout at 3, but don't worry about it. I'll figure something out. My dad's available. He already said he'd love to watch Jamie for a few hours." Ryan hesitated. Roger Mackenzie wasn't a bad grandfather, exactly. He showed up for birthdays, remembered to ask about Jamie's preschool activities, always brought expensive gifts. But something in the older man's manner had always felt slightly off to Ryan. The way Roger's eyes would linger a bit too long on Jamie, or how he'd insist on giving the boy baths when he visited, even though Jamie was old enough to bathe himself with supervision. "Ryan? You there?" "Yeah, sorry." "Sure, Roger's fine. You don't sound convinced." "No, it's good. I'm probably just being paranoid." He forced lightness into his voice. "Must be from watching too many true crime documentaries for research." Karen laughed. "Your job is making you suspicious of everyone. My dad adores Jamie. They'll have fun together." After hanging up, Ryan tried to shake off the unease. He'd never caught Roger doing anything inappropriate. The old man was just peculiar, distant. Roger had raised Karen as a single father after his wife died when Karen was 12, and maybe that explained his awkwardness. Not every grandfather was the warm, cookie-baking type. By 2:30, Ryan pulled into his driveway in the quiet riverside suburb. Their house sat on a corner lot, a modest 2-story with a fenced backyard that bordered the Peck's property. Roger's silver Mercedes was already parked out front. "Daddy," Jamie launched himself off the porch, nearly tripping on his light-up sneakers. Ryan scooped him up, breathing in the scent of apple shampoo. "Hey, buddy, you ready to hang out with Grandpa Roger for a bit? He said we're going to do something special." Jamie's brown eyes sparkled with excitement. "A surprise." "Oh yeah? What kind of surprise?" "He said it's a secret. Just for us." Something cold slithered through Ryan's gut, but Roger emerged from the house before he could probe further. The older man was tall and lean, his silver hair precisely combed, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that looked freshly pressed despite the casual setting. "Ryan, right on time." Roger's smile didn't quite reach his pale blue eyes. "Karen said you need to be gone by 3? Location scout across town. Should be back by 6:30, 7 at the latest." Ryan set Jamie down, then crouched to his son's level. "You be good for Grandpa, okay? Mind your manners." "I will, Daddy." Ryan straightened, meeting Roger's gaze. "Call me if anything comes up." "Anything at all." "Of course." Roger's hand settled on Jamie's shoulder, fingers curling slightly. "We'll be just fine. Won't we, champ?" Jamie nodded enthusiastically, and Ryan forced himself to walk back to his car. This was ridiculous. Roger was family. Karen trusted him completely. Ryan was just on edge from too many late nights editing footage of society's underbelly. Still, he sat in the car for a moment longer than necessary, watching through the windshield as Roger led Jamie back inside. The door closed, and Ryan started the engine. The location scout took longer than expected. The venue owner wanted to negotiate terms, then insisted on showing Ryan every inch of the space, while sharing rambling stories about bands that had played there in the 90s. By the time Ryan escaped, it was nearly 6. He was 15 minutes from home when his phone rang. Penny Peck's name flashed on the screen. His neighbor rarely called. They exchanged friendly waves and occasional small talk about lawn care, but that was the extent of their relationship. "Hello? Ryan? Ryan, you need to get home. Right now." Penny's voice was shrill, bordering on panic. "What's wrong? Is it Jamie?" I don't know how to explain. Just come home. Please. Hurry." "Penny, what did you see?" "Through your window. The one facing my kitchen. I was doing dishes and I looked over and I saw." Her voice broke. "Just come. I already called my husband. He's on his way home too. Just please hurry." The phone went dead. Ryan's hands tightened on the wheel as he swerved into the left lane, accelerating past the speed limit. His mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Jamie hurt. Roger having a medical emergency. A break-in. Or something else. Something that explained why Penny sounded terrified instead of just concerned. He ran 2 red lights and nearly sideswiped a pickup truck. The suburban streets blurred past. His street. His house. He barely remembered to put the car in park before he was out, sprinting toward the back door, because it was closer and he didn't want to waste seconds. The door was unlocked. He burst through into the kitchen, and the house was quiet. Too quiet. No TV sounds. No laughter. Jamie. His voice echoed. Roger. He moved through the kitchen into the living room. Nothing. Then he heard it. A faint sound from upstairs. Movement. A drawer closing. Ryan took the stairs 3 at a time. The hallway stretched before him. Jamie's bedroom door was ajar, lights spilling out. He pushed it open. The scene branded itself into his brain with crystalline clarity. Jamie lay on his bed, completely still, wearing only his underwear. His skin looked wrong. Too pale, limbs arranged too carefully. Roger stood beside the bed with a camera in his hands, the kind of expensive DSLR professionals used. A tripod stood in the corner. Lights. Actual photography lights, positioned around the bed. Roger's head snapped up. For one frozen moment, their eyes locked. Then Roger lowered the camera, and his expression shifted into something Ryan had never seen on the older man's face. Not fear. Not guilt. Calculation. You weren't supposed to see this, Roger said quietly, his voice perfectly calm. You said 7. It's only 6. Ryan's vision narrowed. The room seemed to tilt. He was aware of his fists clenching, his breathing going shallow, but distantly, as if it were happening to someone else. What did you do to my son? He's fine. Just sleeping. Roger set the camera down on the dresser with careful precision. He'll wake up in an hour or so. Won't remember a thing. The casual tone, the complete lack of remorse. It snapped something loose in Ryan's chest. He crossed the room in 2 strides and slammed Roger against the wall, forearm pressed against the older man's throat. What did you do? Roger didn't struggle. His pale eyes held something almost like amusement. Nothing that can't be undone. Yet, this was just the beginning, Ryan. Just photographs. Innocent enough, really. Nothing a court would care about. Ryan's arm pressed harder. Roger's face began to redden. Dad? Ryan. The voice from downstairs, Karen's voice, froze him. She was home. The hospital must have let her go early. Roger's lips curved into a smile even as he struggled for air. What are you going to tell her, he whispered. That her father, who raised her alone, who she adores, is a monster? With what proof? A few photos of a sleeping child? I'll say I was practicing my photography. That you attacked me for no reason. Footsteps on the stairs. Ryan's mind split into 2 tracks. One screamed to crush Roger's windpipe, to eliminate the threat permanently. The other calculated frantically. Karen would see her father with bruises, Ryan in a rage, Jamie unconscious. Who would she believe? He released Roger and spun to Jamie, gathering his son's limp body into his arms. The boy was warm, breathing steadily, but completely unresponsive. Drugged. Roger had drugged his child. Ryan? What's going on? Karen appeared in the doorway, her scrubs still on, concern creasing her face. Then she saw Jamie. Oh my God, what happened? Your father, Ryan began, but Roger cut him off. Jamie had some kind of episode. Roger's voice was rough from the pressure on his throat, but steady. He rubbed his neck, the redness already visible. He just collapsed. Started seizing. I was so frightened. I laid him on the bed and called 911, but then he stopped seizing and fell asleep. I was about to call you both. I've been watching him breathe, making sure he's okay. He's lying, Ryan said flatly. He drugged Jamie. He was taking pictures. Pictures? Karen looked around the room, seeing the camera equipment. Her face went white. Dad, why do you have all this stuff in Jamie's room? I brought my camera to show Jamie. You know I've been taking that photography class at the senior center. Roger's voice gained strength, playing the confused elderly man perfectly. When he collapsed, I didn't know what to do. I suppose I should have moved everything, but I was focused on Jamie, making sure he was breathing. Check his pupils, Ryan interrupted. Look at them. He's been drugged. Karen took Jamie from Ryan's arms, her nurse's training taking over. She lifted one of Jamie's eyelids, then the other. Her face went very still. His pupils are constricted, and his respiratory rate is too slow. She looked up at Roger, and something Ryan had never seen before entered her eyes. Doubt. Dad, what did you give him? Nothing. Karen, sweetheart, I would never. His symptoms are consistent with benzodiazepine ingestion. Her voice had gone clinical, the way it did when she was protecting herself from emotion. Or possibly an antihistamine overdose. Dad, what did you give my son? Roger's mask slipped, just for a second. The calculated look returned, the one he'd given Ryan before Karen arrived. Then he seemed to crumple. I just wanted him to nap. He was so energetic, running around, and I'm not young anymore. I gave him some of my sleeping medication. Just a tiny bit, to help him rest so I could rest too. Tears welled in his eyes, actual tears. I didn't think it would affect him like this. I'm so sorry. I'm a foolish old man. Ryan wanted to scream. The performance was masterful. Roger had pivoted from predator to sympathetic grandfather in seconds. But Karen wasn't buying it. Not completely. We're taking him to the hospital. Now. She looked at Ryan. Get the car started. As Ryan moved toward the door, Roger called out. Karen, please. I made a mistake. A stupid, thoughtless mistake. Don't let this ruin our relationship. You're all I have. Karen didn't answer. She carried Jamie down the stairs, and Ryan followed, his mind already working through what he'd seen. The professional camera. The lights. The way Jamie had been positioned. The complete lack of surprise on Roger's face when caught. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an old man making a poor judgment call. This was planned. Rehearsed. And if Roger had done this before, if he'd been building towards something worse, then Jamie might not be the first. In the car, as Ryan drove toward the emergency room with Karen cradling their unconscious son, he made a decision. He'd spent the last 8 years documenting hidden truths, exposing corruption, following trails that others missed. He'd investigated child trafficking rings in Southeast Asia, corruption in foster care systems, abuse in youth detention centers. He knew how these predators worked, knew how they hid, how they networked, how they protected each other. And now he was going to use everything he'd learned to destroy Roger McKenzie. Not just destroy him, obliterate him, make him wish he'd never laid eyes on Jamie. But he'd have to be smart, patient, because Roger was right about one thing. What Ryan had witnessed might not be enough for a conviction. A sleeping child and some camera equipment. A grandfather's word against a son-in-law's accusation. Ryan would need more. He'd need everything. And he'd get it. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Roger's house, already planning his next move. The old man had made a fatal mistake. He'd shown Ryan what he was. Now Ryan would show Roger what happened when you threatened a father's child. At the hospital, the ER doctor confirmed what Karen had suspected. Jamie had Ambien in his system, a significant dose for a child his size. The toxicology report would take days to come back with exact levels, but the preliminary tests were damning. We need to report this, the doctor said quietly, glancing between Ryan and Karen. This is a case of inappropriate medication administration to a minor, potentially criminal. Ryan watched Karen's face as she processed this. The color drained from her cheeks. Her father, the man who'd raised her, who'd been her only parent for most of her life, had poisoned her son. I need to make a call, she said finally, her voice hollow. She stepped into the hallway, and through the window, Ryan could see her on the phone. Her body language was rigid, controlled. When she came back, her eyes were red but dry. I called my dad. Told him not to contact us until we figure this out. She sat down heavily in the chair beside Jamie's bed. He kept saying it was a mistake, that he just wanted Jamie to nap. But Ryan, the camera equipment, the lights, that's not normal. That's not something you just happen to have set up. No, Ryan agreed carefully. It's not. You think he was going to? She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't know what I think yet, but I'm going to find out. She looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw the moment she understood that he meant it. That he wasn't going to let this go, wasn't going to accept Roger's excuse. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to make sure Jamie is safe. And if Roger has done this before, to make sure he never does it again. Karen nodded slowly. Then she reached out and took his hand. Okay, she said. Okay, but we do this right. Legally. Through the system. Ryan squeezed her hand, but didn't answer. Because he'd already decided that if the system failed, if Roger walked away from this, then legal wouldn't matter anymore. Jamie stirred slightly in the bed, a soft whimper escaping his lips. Ryan moved to his son's side, stroking his hair. "Daddy's here," he whispered. "You're safe now. I promise." And he meant it. Whatever it took. Whatever he had to do. Roger McKenzie had started something today. Ryan Daniel was going to finish it. Jamie was released from the hospital the following afternoon with instructions to watch for any delayed effects from the medication. The toxicology report confirmed 12.5 milligrams of Ambien in his system, an adult dose that could have stopped his breathing if he'd been given any more. Ryan barely slept that night, lying awake in the dark while Karen's soft breathing filled the room. His mind kept returning to Roger's expression when he'd been caught. Not panic, not shame, calculation. Like he was already working out angles, spinning the narrative. And those lights. Professional photography equipment didn't appear overnight. Roger had brought it to their house with intention, with a plan, which meant he'd been preparing for this, waiting for an opportunity. The thought made Ryan's skin crawl. By dawn, he was in his home office, the converted spare bedroom where he kept his editing equipment and research files. He opened his laptop and started a new document, labeling it simply RM Investigation. First, the basics. Roger McKenzie, 68 years old. Retired accountant from a mid-sized firm in Sacramento, though he'd moved to Riverside 5 years ago to be closer to Karen. Widowed. No criminal record. Ryan had already checked that. On paper, Roger was clean. But Ryan had learned long ago that predators didn't always leave official trails. They were careful, patient. They built respectable facades and hid behind them. He pulled up Roger's social media. Minimal presence, a Facebook account with sparse posts, mostly shared articles about photography and comments on Karen's photos. LinkedIn showed his career history, 32 years at the same accounting firm, steady progression to senior accountant, retired with full pension. Surface level, everything looked normal. Ryan dug deeper. He cross-referenced Roger's name with news archives, court records, anything that might show a pattern. Nothing. Then he tried a different approach, looking at the photography angle. Roger had mentioned a senior center class. Ryan found the Riverside Senior Center's website and called their main number. "Good morning, Riverside Senior Center. This is Dee speaking." "Hi, Dee. I'm trying to find information about photography classes. My father-in-law, Roger McKenzie, mentioned he was taking one." "Oh, Mr. McKenzie. Yes, he was in our Introduction to Digital Photography course last fall. Lovely gentleman. Very dedicated student. He's not taking classes anymore. Well, the intro course ended in December. We offered an intermediate course this spring, but he didn't enroll. Said he wanted to practice on his own for a while." Dee's voice brightened. "Is he thinking about coming back? We'd love to have him. He had a real eye for composition. What kind of subjects was he photographing?" "Oh, the usual for beginners. Landscapes, still life, that sort of thing. We did a whole unit on portrait photography too. He was particularly interested in that section." Ryan's stomach tightened. Did he bring models? Or photograph other students? "No, actually. He said he wanted to practice with his grandson. Brought in some lovely photos of a little boy. That must be your son. The instructor said he had a natural talent for child photography. Very patient, very good at capturing candid moments." "Right. Thank you for your time." Ryan hung up, his hand trembling slightly. Roger had been practicing, learning how to photograph children specifically, and he'd been showing photos of Jamie to a class full of people, normalizing it, building a cover story. This wasn't opportunistic. This was methodical. He spent the next 3 hours searching through predator databases, cross-referencing techniques, reading case files from his own documentary research. There was a pattern to how these men operated. They tested boundaries gradually, started with fully clothed photos, normalized the camera around the child, then progressively pushed further. The question was, had Roger pushed further before Jamie? Had there been other children? Ryan opened a new tab and searched for Roger's previous address in Sacramento. A house in a quiet suburb, sold 5 years ago when he moved to Riverside. Ryan pulled up property records, then used satellite view to scan the neighborhood. Several houses with swing sets. Young families. Lots of potential targets. He needed to know if anyone had reported anything. But police reports weren't public unless they resulted in charges, and Roger had no record. Ryan would have to go around official channels. He checked the time, 9 a.m. Karen had taken the day off work to stay with Jamie, who was currently watching cartoons in the living room, seemingly unaffected by yesterday's ordeal. The resilience of children was both wonderful and terrifying. Ryan grabbed his keys. "I need to run some errands," he called to Karen. "Be back in a few hours." She appeared in the office doorway, worry etched in her face. "Where are you going?" "Following up on some things." "About your dad." She bit her lip. "The police said they'd investigate. Maybe we should just let them. They'll do a surface check and probably close it as an isolated incident." Elderly man gave medication to his grandson without thinking. First offense. Maybe he gets a warning. Ryan met her eyes. "I need to know if there's more. If Jamie was in danger of worse than what we saw." Karen was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Be careful. My dad. He's not what I thought he was. But he's also smart. If you start digging, he'll know. Let him know. I want him scared." The drive to Sacramento took 2 hours. Ryan had the address of Roger's old house programmed into his GPS, but he drove past it without stopping. Instead, he parked 3 blocks away and walked back, studying the neighborhood. Upper middle class. Well-maintained homes. A pocket park at the end of the street where kids played on swings and slides. The kind of place where people knew their neighbors, where kids rode bikes until dark. The kind of place where a trusted, friendly grandfather would blend in perfectly. Ryan approached the house directly next to Roger's former residence. A woman in her 50s answered the door, suspicious until he explained he was doing research for a documentary about neighborhood safety. "I'm talking to longtime residents about community dynamics, criminal activity, anything unusual that's happened over the years. I understand a Roger McKenzie used to live next door?" Her expression shifted, not recognition of the name, but something else. Discomfort. "He moved away several years ago," she said carefully. "Did you know him well?" "Not really. He kept to himself mostly. Quiet neighbor." She started to close the door. "Did he ever interact with children in the neighborhood?" She froze. For a second, Ryan thought she'd slam the door. Instead, she studied him, really looked at him. "Why are you really asking about Roger?" Ryan made a decision. "Because he drugged my 4-year-old son and was photographing him. And I need to know if my son was the first." The woman's face went pale. She glanced back into her house, then stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. "My daughter was friends with a girl who lived across the street. Margie Downs. Sweet kid. When she was about 7, she started acting strange. Nightmares. Didn't want to play outside. My daughter said Margie told her that Mr. Roger made her feel weird, but she wouldn't explain what that meant. Did anyone report it?" Margie's parents asked Roger about it. He said he'd just been friendly, that maybe the girl was going through a phase. The parents believed him. Roger seemed so harmless. She wrapped her arms around herself. A few months later, Margie's family moved away. My daughter lost touch with her. "Do you remember Margie's last name?" "Her parents' names. The Downs family. Christine and Michael Downs. I don't know where they went." Ryan got Michael Downs' contact information from a public record search and called him that afternoon from a coffee shop parking lot. The man was wary at first, but when Ryan explained about Jamie, there was a long silence. "Mr. Downs? Are you still there? We should have reported him." The man's voice was thick with old guilt. But Margie couldn't tell us exactly what happened. She just said Mr. McKenzie played picture games with her. We asked Roger, and he said he'd let her pose for some photography practice shots in his yard. Said it was innocent. We wanted to believe him. "Did he ever show you the photos?" "No. He said he deleted them because he didn't want to make us uncomfortable. At the time, we thought that was considerate." Now, Downs exhaled shakily. "Is your son okay?" "Physically, yes. But Downs, I need to know, was there anyone else? Any other kids Roger showed interest in?" "There was a boy, younger than Margie. I saw Roger talking to him at the park a few times. The kid's family moved too, about 6 months after we did. Different direction. I always wondered." Ryan got those names too. Then another lead, and another. By the time he drove back to Riverside, he had a list of 5 families who'd lived near Roger, or had moved away within a year of living there. That couldn't be coincidence. He arrived home after dark to find Karen putting Jamie to bed. She met him downstairs, exhaustion and dread warring on her face. "Did you find something?" Ryan showed her his notes, watched as she read through the names, the timestamps, the pattern that emerged. "He's done this before," she whispered. "Multiple times. And he got away with it because parents wanted to believe the best. Because kids couldn't articulate what made them uncomfortable. Because Roger was careful." Ryan's jaw clenched. "But he got sloppy with Jamie. Or maybe bold. He thought he had time, thought I wouldn't be back until 7. He made a mistake. What do? We build a case so airtight that he can't talk his way out of it. And then we make sure everyone knows exactly what Roger McKenzie is. Karen looked toward the stairs, where their son slept. When she turned back to Ryan, something had hardened in her eyes. Tell me what you need me to do. Over the next week, Ryan became a ghost. He arranged for a colleague to take over his current documentary project, citing a family emergency. Then he disappeared into his investigation. He tracked down 3 of the 5 families from Roger's Sacramento neighborhood. 2 refused to talk, still clinging to the belief that nothing had really happened. But the third, a couple named Casey and Tracy McKay, whose son had been 5 at the time, broke down when Ryan explained about Jamie. We knew something was wrong. Tracy said over video call, tears streaming down her face. Tony would come back from playing outside and be different. Quiet. He started wetting the bed again. We asked if anyone had heard him, but he said no. He just said Mr. Roger played special games that were our secret. Did you contact the police? Casey's face was grim. We tried, but Tony couldn't tell them anything specific. No physical abuse. No witnesses. And Roger had already established himself as the friendly neighborhood grandpa. The cops said without evidence of an actual crime, there wasn't much they could do. They talked to Roger, who denied everything. Said he'd waved at Tony a few times, maybe let him pet his dog. That was it. You had a dog? Ryan asked. No, Roger did. A golden retriever. He'd walk it around the park, use it to interact with kids. The dog died about a year before he moved. A prop. Roger had used the dog as a tool to gain trust and access. Where's Tony now? Ryan asked. Therapy, Tracy said quietly. He's 12 now. Still has nightmares. We moved across the country to get away from those memories. But they followed him. Ryan recorded the conversation, with permission, and added it to his growing file. Then he made a risky move. He called Roger. The old man answered on the 3rd ring. Ryan, I've been hoping you'd call. Have you? Of course. To discuss this misunderstanding. Karen won't answer my calls. I understand she's upset, but surely we can work through this like adults. Ryan kept his voice neutral. What happened with Jamie wasn't a misunderstanding. I made a poor judgment call. I've admitted that. But the way you attacked me, the accusations you're making, it's tearing this family apart. Is that what you want? I want the truth. The truth is that I'm an old man who made a mistake. Nothing more sinister than that. Roger's tone shifted, became almost cajoling. You're a documentarian, Ryan. You chase stories, see conspiracies where there are none. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And sometimes a predator is just a predator. Silence. Then Roger's voice went cold. Be very careful what you say. Slander is actionable. And I have resources you might not expect. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Let this go. For Karen's sake, if not your own. She's already lost her mother. Don't make her lose her father too over a misunderstanding. See, that's the thing, Roger. I've been doing some research. Talked to some of your old neighbors. The Downs family. The McKays. Interesting how many families moved away from your street. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what you think you've discovered, but I'd be very careful about spreading rumors based on hearsay from strangers. They're not strangers. They're parents who trusted you, who let you near their children, and who've been living with guilt ever since. Guilt over what? Nothing happened to those children. Nothing happened to Jamie. You're creating a narrative that doesn't exist. Then you won't mind if I keep digging. Maybe contact the senior center where you took those photography classes. See if anyone else noticed your particular interest in child portraiture. Roger's breathing changed, just slightly, but Ryan caught it. A hitch. The first real sign of worry. What do you want, Ryan? I want you to confess. Everything. Every child you've targeted. Every boundary you've crossed. I want you to turn yourself in and face consequences. Roger laughed. Actually laughed. You have nothing. No evidence. No proof. Just the word of some parents whose children had overactive imaginations. And one incident with my grandson that amounts to poor judgment at worst. No prosecutor would touch this case. Maybe not yet. But I'm patient. And thorough. I've spent years investigating people who thought they were untouchable. You're not special, Roger. You're just another predator who got away with it for too long. And you're just an angry father seeing monsters and shadows. This conversation is over. Don't contact me again. The line went dead. Ryan sat back, heart pounding. He'd shown his hand, let Roger know he was being investigated. Risky, but also necessary. Because now Roger would make a move. And when he did, Ryan would be watching. He was still at his desk an hour later when Karen came in. I heard you on the phone with him. I wanted to see how he'd react. Confirm what I already suspected. And he's not going to confess. He thinks he's smarter than me. Thinks he can wait this out. Karen sat down across from him, her face drawn. Ryan, I need to tell you something. About my mother. He waited. She died when I was 12. Car accident, supposedly. She was driving home late at night and went off the road into a ravine. But Karen's voice trembled. I've been thinking about it. About things I noticed back then but didn't understand. My mom had been different in the months before she died. Angry. She and my dad fought constantly. I'd hear her crying at night. You think the accident wasn't an accident? I think my mom might have found out what he was. And I think she either couldn't live with it, or she couldn't finish. Ryan's blood went cold. Did your mom have any siblings? Anyone she might have confided in? Her sister, Gloria. They weren't close, but they talked sometimes. She lives in Oregon. Can you get me her number? Gloria Porter answered on the second ring. When Karen identified herself, there was a sharp intake of breath. Karen, it's been years. I know, Aunt Gloria. I'm sorry, but I need to ask you something about my mom. What about her? Karen glanced at Ryan, then took a breath. Did she ever say anything to you about my dad? About being worried about him? Long silence. Why are you asking this now? Because I think my father might have hurt my son, or planned to, and I'm trying to understand if there were signs I missed. Gloria's voice when she spoke again was thick with tears. Your mother called me 2 weeks before she died. She was hysterical. Said she'd found photographs on your father's computer. Pictures of you, Karen, from when you were younger, arranged in ways that weren't appropriate. She said she was going to divorce him, take you away. The room seemed to tilt. Karen made a small, wounded sound. She told me not to tell anyone until she had you somewhere safe. She said Roger had threatened her. Said if she tried to leave, she'd regret it. Gloria was crying now. And then a week later, she was dead. The police ruled it an accident. Roger played the devastated widower perfectly. I wanted to say something, but I had no proof. Just a phone call and suspicions. And you were so young, Karen. I thought about trying to get custody, but Roger had lawyers. Money. I was a single woman with barely enough to support myself. So you did nothing, Karen said flatly. I did nothing. And I've hated myself for it every day since. When you went off to college, I was so relieved. Thought you'd gotten away from him. But then you had Jamie, and when Roger moved to be close to you. Gloria's voice cracked. I should have warned you. But I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid I was wrong. Ryan took the phone from Karen's shaking hands. Gloria, this is Ryan, Karen's husband. Did your sister keep any evidence? Emails, copies of the photos, anything? I don't know. Roger controlled everything after she died. Went through all her things. If there was evidence, he would have destroyed it. Unless he hadn't. Unless Roger had kept it, the way predators often did. Trophies. Insurance. Thank you for telling us, Ryan said. I know it wasn't easy. After hanging up, he turned to find Karen staring at nothing, her face white. He killed her, she whispered. My father killed my mother. And then he with me. Ryan pulled her into his arms as she broke, sobs racking her body. He held her while she grieved for the mother she'd lost and the father who'd never really existed. Grieved for herself as a child who hadn't been protected. And while he held her, his mind was already working through the implications. Roger wasn't just a predator. He was a murderer who'd gotten away with it. Which meant he was more dangerous than Ryan had thought. Cornered animals were unpredictable. Ryan would have to be smarter, faster, and he'd have to cross lines he'd never crossed before. Because Roger McKenzie wasn't going to face justice through legal channels. The system had failed too many times already. No, this would require something different. This would require Ryan to become the monster Roger had always deserved to meet. When Karen finally pulled back, her eyes were red but hard. What are we going to do? She asked. Ryan thought about all the families Roger had destroyed. All the children he'd damaged. The woman he'd murdered. We're going to destroy him, Ryan said simply. Completely. Utterly. In a way that makes sure he never hurts another child again. How? Ryan pulled up his laptop and opened a file he'd been building. A dossier on Roger's life, habits, weaknesses. 12 years of documentary filmmaking had taught him how to find pressure points. How to exploit them. First, we need to get into his house. Find evidence. Photos, files, anything he's kept. Predators don't throw away their collections. They hide them. He'll never let us in. He won't have to. You're his daughter. You still have the key to his house from when you used to check on his place while he traveled. Karen's hand went to her purse automatically. The key was there, on a ring with her own house keys. This is breaking and entering. Yes. We could go to jail. Only if we get caught. And only if what we find isn't damning enough to justify it. Ryan met her eyes. I won't ask you to do this. It's your father. If you want to walk away. He's not my father, Karen said, her voice like steel. Fathers protect their children. Whatever Roger is, he stopped being my father a long time ago. Maybe he never was. She stood, key in hand. When do we go? Ryan checked the time. 8 p.m. Roger was a creature of habit. Karen had mentioned he attended a weekly poker game on Thursday nights. Didn't get home until midnight. Tomorrow night. We'll have about 4 hours. That should be enough. They spent the next day preparing. Ryan reviewed his documentary equipment, selecting a small camera with night vision capability and a portable hard drive with maximum storage. He printed out photos from his files, pictures of the families Roger had targeted, and made copies of the statements he'd collected. If they found evidence, they'd need to document everything perfectly. Chain of custody might not matter in court. They'd obtained it illegally, but it would matter in the court of public opinion. Because that was Ryan's real plan. Not a criminal trial that Roger could lawyer his way out of. Not a process that would drag on for years while Roger remained free. No, Ryan was going to expose him so thoroughly, so publicly, that Roger's life would implode. Social death first. Then criminal prosecution would follow naturally, backed by overwhelming public pressure. Thursday evening, they left Jamie with Karen's friend Regina Gibson, claiming they needed a date night to process stress. Regina, who'd heard a sanitized version of the incident, grandfather gave wrong medication by mistake, was happy to help. They drove to Roger's house in silence. It was a modest single-story ranch in a retirement community, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and trusted their neighbors implicitly. The perfect hunting ground for a predator. Karen's hand trembled as she unlocked the front door. They stepped inside, and Ryan immediately noticed the camera system, not just a doorbell cam, but a full security setup. He's paranoid, Ryan murmured. Good. Paranoid people make mistakes. They moved through the house methodically. Ryan photographed everything first, the layout, the ordinary appearance of the living room and kitchen. Then they started searching. Nothing in the obvious places. No computer in plain sight. The bedroom closet held only clothes. The garage was full of normal retiree detritus, golf clubs, gardening tools, boxes of old tax returns. He'd keep it somewhere secure, Karen said. Somewhere he could control access. Ryan studied the house layout. Single story, but the ceiling in the master bedroom closet seemed lower than it should be. He pulled out his phone's flashlight and examined the corners. There, a seam in the drywall, barely visible. It took 10 minutes to figure out the mechanism, a section of the closet wall that pivoted on hidden hinges. Behind it, a small room, maybe 4 feet by 6 feet. No windows. Ryan's stomach turned as he stepped inside. The walls were covered in photographs. Not just photos, a timeline. Children's faces arranged chronologically, spanning decades. Some looked like school photos. Others were candid shots, clearly taken without the subjects knowing. Still others. Oh God, Karen whispered from behind him. The later photos in each sequence showed children in various states of undress. Posed. Positioned. All asleep or unconscious. Jamie's face stared back at them from the most recent section. Only 2 photos so far, both from the day Ryan had interrupted. But there was a gap beside them. Space left for more. Ryan's hands shook as he started photographing everything with his camera. Every wall. Every image. Metadata showed dates going back 40 years. This can't all be him, Karen breathed. Some of these kids are from the 70s. Ryan zoomed in on a photo from 1978. A young girl, maybe 6, posed in a nightgown. Asleep. The quality suggested film photography, converted to digital later. Some predators inherit collections, Ryan said, his voice mechanical as he forced himself to stay clinical. Or trade them. Roger might have gotten started with someone else's photos. But then he saw it. In the corner of one of the oldest photos. A reflection in a window. A young man holding a camera. Roger. Decades younger. But unmistakable. He's been doing this his entire life, Karen said. That's why my mother. She must have found this room. Seen these photos. Ryan kept photographing, documenting every detail. There had to be 50 children here. Maybe more. Some sequences had only a photo or two. Others had dozens, showing progression over months or years. His documentary training kicked in. He noted patterns, details, anything that might identify victims or locations. Several photos showed the same bedroom, suggesting Roger had set up a dedicated space in a previous home. Others were clearly taken in different houses. The man had been careful, methodical, patient, and he'd been getting away with it for 40 years. At the back of the room, Ryan found a filing cabinet. Locked. He used a screwdriver from Roger's garage to force it open. Inside, external hard drives. Dozens of them, each labeled with years. We need to take these, Ryan said. All of them. If we do, he'll know someone was here. He'll destroy everything else. There is no everything else. This is it. This is his collection, his insurance, his control. We take it, and we take his power. They loaded the hard drives into a duffel bag Ryan had brought. He photographed the filing cabinet, the labels, everything. Then he went back to photographing the walls. It took 3 hours to document the entire room. By the time they finished, Ryan had over 1,000 photos and 12 hard drives. They reset everything as close to original as possible, closed the hidden door, and left the house exactly as they'd found it. Driving home, neither of them spoke. The weight of what they'd seen pressed down like a physical thing. Back in his office, Ryan connected the first hard drive. Don't, Karen said. Don't look. Just turn it all over to the police. We broke into his house. Illegally obtained evidence. A defense lawyer would get it all thrown out. Then what's the point? We can't use it. We can't give it to the police. We can't use it in criminal court. But we can use it everywhere else. Ryan's mind was racing. Social media, news outlets, every parent in Roger's retirement community, every family he's ever interacted with. We don't need a conviction, Karen. We need exposure. You want to release photos of child victims publicly? No. I want to release enough to show what he is. Redact the victims' faces. But make it clear what Roger's been doing. Make it impossible for him to hide. He'll sue us for everything we have. Let him try. Discovery in a civil suit would force him to admit the photos exist. He'd have to claim we fabricated them or admit they're real. Either way, he's finished. Karen was quiet for a long moment. Then, when? Tomorrow. I need tonight to prepare the documentation, redact the victims, build the narrative. Tomorrow morning, it goes live. He'll know it was us. Yes. He might come after us. After Jamie. Ryan met her eyes. I'm counting on it. Ryan didn't sleep. He spent the night cataloging the evidence, his disgust and rage warring with his professional training. The hard drives contained exactly what he'd feared, thousands of photos spanning 4 decades. Some were clearly Roger's own work. Others appeared to be traded content from other predators. He worked methodically, selecting images that told the story without exploiting the victims further. Photos of the hidden room. Close-ups of the walls covered in faces. The filing cabinet with dated hard drives. His own photos showing Jamie's face among the collection. For the faces of other victims, he applied pixelation heavy enough to protect identity while showing the pattern. Young children, always asleep or unconscious, always positioned. By dawn, he had a 40-page report documenting everything. The families he'd interviewed, Gloria's testimony about Karen's mother, the evidence from Roger's house. He included timestamps, metadata, context for every claim. Then he built a website. Simple, clean, devastating. The header, Roger Mackenzie, 4 decades of child predation. He uploaded the report as a PDF, embedded select photos, added video interviews with the parents who'd consented to be recorded. The final touch, a victim hotline number, encouraging anyone else Roger had targeted to come forward. At 6 a.m., he sent the link to every major news outlet in California, local television stations, newspapers, online news sites, true crime podcasts, anyone who might pick up the story. Then he posted it on every social media platform he had access to. Tagged child advocacy groups. Tagged the Riverside Police Department. Tagged the FBI. By 7 a.m., his phone was ringing off the hook. By 8 a.m., a news van was parked outside Roger's house. By 9 a.m., the website had crashed from traffic. Ryan had anticipated this. He had mirrors set up on 3 other servers. At 9:30 a.m., Roger called. Ryan almost didn't answer, but he wanted to hear it. Wanted to hear the moment Roger realized he was finished. "You're a dead man." Roger's voice was shaking, with rage, not fear. "Do you understand what you've done? You've destroyed evidence. Contaminated a potential crime scene. You've committed multiple felonies. So have you. For 40 years. Those photos are fake. Fabricated. I'll prove it. And then I'll sue you for everything. Your house. Your career. Your freedom. You'll spend the next decade in prison while I walk free." You really think you can convince people those photos are fabricated? All of them. With metadata going back to 1978? With parents corroborating that their children were in your neighborhood? I'll convince a jury. That's all that matters. There's not going to be a trial, Roger. Your life is over. By this afternoon, every person you've ever known will have seen what you are. Your retirement community will run you out. You'll be unemployable, homeless, alone, and eventually, the criminal charges will come. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but they'll come, and you'll spend whatever's left of your miserable life in prison. Silence. Then Roger's voice dropped to something cold and reptilian. "If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. You illegally entered my home, stole my property, violated my privacy. I have security footage of you and Karen breaking in." Ryan had expected this. "Then release it. Show everyone the security footage of us finding your child abuse collection. I'm sure that'll help your case. You think you're clever. You think you've won. But you don't know who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A coward who drugs children because he's too weak to face anyone who can fight back. A man who murdered his wife to protect his secret. A predator who's been hiding behind a grandfather mask for decades. You can't prove I killed Sarah. Not yet. But I will. I've already put investigators on it. Your wife's accident is being reviewed. Gloria Porter is giving a formal statement. The case is being reopened." That wasn't entirely true. Ryan had contacted the Sacramento Police Department, but they'd been non-committal about reviewing a 20-year-old closed case. Still, the threat was enough. Roger's breathing was ragged. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Goodbye, Roger." Ryan hung up and blocked the number. By noon, 3 different news stations had picked up the story. They couldn't show the explicit photos, but they showed Roger's house, the news trucks gathered outside, snippets from Ryan's interviews with parents. "Local retired accountant accused of decades-long pattern of child abuse," ran one headline. "Grandfather allegedly drugged 4-year-old grandson for photos," read another. The retirement community issued a statement saying they were cooperating with authorities and taking the allegations very seriously. Roger's poker buddies gave interviews saying they were shocked and appalled. The senior center announced they were reviewing their photography class policies. Everything was falling into place. Then, at 2 p.m., Karen called. "Ryan, Jamie's school just called. Someone tried to check him out. Said they were his grandfather, and there was a family emergency." Ryan's blood went ice cold. "Did they release him?" "No. The principal knows what's going on. I warned all of Jamie's teachers this morning. They refused and called the police." "But Ryan, Roger tried to take our son. Where are you?" "Picking up Jamie now. I'm bringing him home." "No. Don't come home. Roger might be watching the house." Ryan's mind raced. "Go to Regina's. Stay there. I'll meet you." He grabbed his keys, but before he could leave, his doorbell rang. Through the window, he saw 2 Riverside police detectives. This was it. Roger had made good on his threat to report the break-in. Ryan answered the door. "Detectives. Mr. Daniel? I'm Detective Marty Douglas. This is Detective Henry Alexander. We need to talk to you about Roger McKenzie. Am I under arrest?" "Should you be?" Douglas raised an eyebrow. "Roger claims I broke into his house and stole property. I assume that's why you're here." "Actually, we're here about the child abuse allegations. Roger McKenzie filed a complaint this morning claiming you fabricated evidence and are harassing him. But we've also received multiple calls from parents who say their children were victimized by Mr. McKenzie. We need your cooperation in sorting this out." Ryan made a decision. "I want immunity from prosecution for any methods I use to obtain evidence before I say anything else." Alexander and Douglas exchanged glances. "That's not something we can promise," Alexander said. "But if you cooperate fully and the evidence leads to prosecution of Roger McKenzie, we can recommend to the DA that you not be charged." It was the best Ryan was going to get. "Come in." He spent 3 hours walking them through everything. The incident with Jamie. the interviews with former neighbors, the discovery of the hidden room, the hard drives. You realize we can't use any of this in a criminal prosecution, Douglas said when Ryan finished. I know, but you can use it to get a warrant. Search his house legally. Find the room yourselves. Seize the hard drives as part of an official investigation. It's still fruit of the poisonous tree. Any defense attorney would argue we only knew to search because of your illegal entry. Then don't mention my illegal entry. Say you received an anonymous tip about Roger McKenzie's activities. Followed up on the tip. Obtained a warrant based on witness statements from the parents I interviewed. Those statements are legitimate. I can have all of them formally recounted to you. Alexander rubbed his jaw. You've thought this through. I've spent 12 years documenting criminal activity. I know how the system works. And I know how it fails. Is that why you went public instead of coming to us first? I came to you after Jamie was drugged. Filed a police report. What happened? Roger claimed it was a mistake. No charges filed. Douglas had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was a different jurisdiction. Sacramento PD. Same result. The system protects people like Roger because he's careful. He doesn't leave obvious evidence. He grooms trust. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's too late and there's no proof. Ryan leaned forward. So yes, I went public. Because public pressure is the only thing that guarantees action. You've complicated things, Alexander said. But I can't say I blame you. They left with copies of Ryan's documentation and promises to obtain legal warrants. Ryan immediately called Karen. Police just left. They're going after Roger, but it's going to take time. Where are you? Still at Regina's. Jamie's asking why we can't go home. Tell him it's an adventure. We're going to stay somewhere else for a few days. Ryan, you're scaring me. Roger tried to abduct Jamie. He's desperate. Desperate people are dangerous. Ryan grabbed his go bag. He'd prepared one that morning with clothes, cash, and copies of all his evidence. Pack a bag. I'm booking us a hotel outside the city. We stay there until Roger is in custody. They spent 3 days at a Holiday Inn 40 miles from Riverside. Ryan monitored news coverage obsessively. The story had gone national. CNN picked it up. Then MSNBC. Fox News ran a segment. Roger's face was everywhere. On day 2, the police executed their warrant. They found the hidden room exactly as Ryan had described it. Seized 17 hard drives. Roger must have had backups Ryan hadn't found. Roger was arrested and charged with multiple counts of child exploitation, possession of child abuse material, and administering a harmful substance to a minor. His bail was set at $2 million. He couldn't make it. Ryan watched the perp walk on television. Roger, in handcuffs, his face haggard. Reporters screaming questions. Cameras flashing. It should have felt like victory. But Ryan knew it wasn't over. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Roger's defense attorney, a high-priced criminal lawyer named Dennis Murray, immediately filed motions to suppress evidence, claiming illegal search and seizure. Ryan's anonymous tip was scrutinized, but the witness statements from parents held up, providing probable cause independent of Ryan's break-in. Most of the evidence was ruled admissible. Meanwhile, Ryan's website had spawned a movement. Dozens of people came forward with stories about Roger. Some were credible. Others were likely opportunistic. But the credible ones painted a pattern spanning 45 years, starting when Roger was in his early 20s. A childhood neighbor remembered Roger as a teenager who'd been too interested in the young kids on the block. A former co-worker recalled Roger volunteering to organize the company Christmas party's photos with employees' children. A woman named Sally Gill came forward claiming Roger had abused her when she was 9 and he was her mother's boyfriend. She'd never reported it because her mother hadn't believed her. The case against Roger was building into something massive. Federal investigators got involved due to the suspected trading of illegal images across state lines. The FBI seized additional evidence from Roger's email accounts and cloud storage. Karen filed for divorce and got a restraining order. Roger wasn't allowed within 500 feet of her or Jamie. Ryan should have felt relief. The system was finally working. Roger would go to prison for the rest of his life. But then the threat started. First, an anonymous email. You destroyed an innocent man's life. Karma's a bitch. Then a phone call in the middle of the night. Heavy breathing. A whispered, your son is so photogenic. Ryan reported them to the police, but there was no way to trace the source. Then the vandalism. Someone spray-painted liar across Ryan's car. slashed his tires. Karen grew paranoid, jumping at every sound. Jamie had nightmares. Ryan installed a security system that rivaled Fort Knox. Who's doing this? Karen asked after finding a dead rat on their doorstep. Roger has friends. People who either believe he's innocent or people involved in the same activities who see him as a liability. Ryan cleaned up the rat, his jaw clenched. They want us scared. Want us to recant. We can't recant. The evidence. I know. But they don't care about evidence. They care about intimidation. The harassment escalated. Someone hacked Ryan's email and sent messages to his professional contacts claiming the documentary maker had fabricated evidence for publicity. Ryan lost 3 contracts. His bank accounts were targeted. Fraudulent charges appeared, requiring hours on the phone to resolve. Someone called Child Protective Services, claiming Ryan and Karen were unfit parents. The investigation was closed quickly, but the stress took its toll. We can't live like this, Karen said after the CPS visit. Jamie is terrified. I'm terrified. Just a little longer. Until the trial. And then what? Roger gets convicted and goes to prison, but his network stays out there? These people won't stop. She was right. Ryan had exposed one predator, but in doing so, he'd made enemies of everyone who wanted Roger's activities to stay hidden. He needed to do more than just put Roger in prison. He needed to dismantle the entire network. Ryan spent the next week digging through the hard drives again, this time looking for patterns in the traded images. Metadata showed files coming from multiple sources. Email addresses embedded in the photos' properties. IP addresses from forums where the images had been shared. He compiled a list of 30 suspected individuals. Some were just email addresses. Others had enough information to identify them. Ryan turned the list over to the FBI. Then he did something riskier. He went on national television. The interview was with a major news program. Ryan, Karen, and one of the parents Roger had victimized sat across from the interviewer. Mr. Daniel, you've been accused by Roger McKenzie's defense team of fabricating evidence and pursuing a vendetta. How do you respond? Ryan looked directly into the camera. Roger McKenzie is not a victim. He's a predator who spent 45 years abusing children. The evidence against him is overwhelming. But he's not alone. There's a network of people like him, and they're trying to discredit me to protect themselves. What network are you referring to? The FBI has a list of 30 individuals who appear to have traded illegal images with Roger McKenzie. Some are being investigated now. Others are trying to intimidate my family into silence. But we won't be silenced. Every single person involved in exploiting children needs to face justice. The interview went viral. Within days, 2 more arrests were made. Men from Roger's trading network who'd been identified through the evidence. The harassment stopped. Not because the network had given up, but because Ryan had made himself too visible. Anything that happened to him now would draw immediate scrutiny. Finally, the trial date arrived. Roger McKenzie sat at the defense table, looking smaller than Ryan remembered. Prison had aged him. Or maybe the mask had just slipped completely, revealing the pathetic creature underneath. The prosecution's case was methodical. They showed the photos from the hidden room, redacted to protect victims, but damning nonetheless. They brought in digital forensic experts who testified about the metadata, proving the images were decades old and unaltered. Parents testified. Sally Gill took the stand and described what Roger had done to her 35 years ago, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. The McKay family testified about their son Tony, who was now in therapy after years of repressed trauma. Gloria Porter testified about her sister Sarah's death, the suspicious circumstances, and her suspicions that Roger had been abusing Karen. Karen herself took the stand. She testified about finding the photos in her father's computer when she was a teenager, something she'd repressed until Gloria's testimony triggered the memory. How Roger had caught her, deleted the files in front of her, and convinced her she'd imagined it. How he'd gaslight her for years. And Ryan testified about finding Jamie unconscious, the camera equipment, Roger's complete lack of remorse. The defense tried to claim the photos were planted. That Ryan had fabricated everything. That Roger was a lonely old man being persecuted by an overzealous son-in-law. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The prosecution was asking for 40 years, effectively a life sentence for a 68-year-old man. But Roger's lawyer filed an appeal motion, arguing improper admission of evidence. Ryan sat in the courtroom, watching Roger being led away in handcuffs, and felt hollow. He'd won. Roger would die in prison. The network was being dismantled. Children were safer. So why didn't it feel like enough? That night, Karen found him in his office, staring at his computer. You should be celebrating. It's over. Is it? Roger's in prison, but he's still alive. Still breathing. Still existing in the world. Karen sat down beside him. What are you saying? I'm saying that 40 years in prison doesn't feel like justice for 45 years of destroying children's lives. For murdering your mother. For what he did to you. The law is insufficient. Ryan turned to her. You know that. You've known it since Gloria told us about your mom. The system failed her. Failed you. Failed Jamie. The only reason Roger is facing any consequences at all is because I went outside the system. You want to kill him. It wasn't a question. Ryan didn't answer immediately. Then, I want him to suffer the way his victims suffered. Prison is too easy. Too clean. He gets meals, healthcare, a bed. Maybe some other inmates rough him up, maybe not. But he'll still exist. If you do something to him, you'll go to prison too. Maybe. Or maybe I'm smart enough not to get caught. Karen stood. I need you here. Jamie needs you here. Not in prison. Not on the run. Here. I know. Then let it go. Roger's life is over. He'll die in a cage. That's justice enough. Ryan nodded, but his mind was already working through scenarios. How to get to Roger. How to make him pay in a way that felt proportional to his crimes. Because Karen was wrong. It wasn't justice enough. Not even close. Sentencing day arrived. Roger was brought into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles. He looked diminished. Weak. The judge was a stern woman in her 50s named Judge Christine McPherson. She'd presided over the trial with no-nonsense efficiency, shutting down the defense's theatrics quickly. Mr. Mackenzie, you have been found guilty of 17 counts of child exploitation, 12 counts of possession of child abuse material, and 1 count of administering a harmful substance to a minor. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything to say? Roger stood slowly. His lawyer tried to guide him, but Roger waved him off. Your Honor, I maintain my innocence. These charges are the result of a coordinated campaign by my son-in-law to destroy my reputation. The evidence was fabricated, planted, or obtained through illegal means. I am an old man who made the mistake of loving his grandson too much. If that's a crime, then I suppose I'm guilty. But I am not the monster I've been portrayed as. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. Even now, Roger couldn't admit the truth. Couldn't show remorse. Judge McPherson's expression didn't change. Mr. Mackenzie, I have reviewed all the evidence in this case, including testimony from multiple victims spanning 4 decades. I have seen the photographs you kept as trophies. I have read the psychological evaluations describing you as a textbook predator with no capacity for empathy or rehabilitation. She paused, letting the words sink in. You are a danger to every child you encounter. You have destroyed lives, damaged families, and shown no remorse whatsoever. Your claims of innocence are not only unconvincing, they're insulting to the intelligence of this court and the jury who convicted you. Roger's jaw tightened. I am sentencing you to 40 years in state prison on each count of child exploitation, to run consecutively. An additional 20 years for the possession charges, also consecutive, and 10 years for the drug administration charge. In total, you are sentenced to 730 years in prison. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Roger swayed on his feet. Additionally, I am recommending you be housed in general population, not protective custody. The prison system can determine if that's feasible from a safety standpoint, but it is this court's recommendation. General population, where child predators were the lowest of the low, where Roger would be a target. The judge wasn't just sentencing him to die in prison. She was sentencing him to hell on earth until he did. Roger was led out of the courtroom, his face ashen. He didn't look at Ryan or Karen. Outside, reporters mobbed them. Ryan gave a brief statement thanking the prosecution and the jury. Then he and Karen escaped to their car. It's really over, Karen said, buckling her seatbelt. Yeah, Ryan agreed. But he was lying. Because 2 days later, Roger was attacked in prison. 3 inmates cornered him in the shower and beat him so badly he spent a week in the prison hospital. Ryan heard about it through a contact in the corrections system, a guard he'd interviewed years ago for a different documentary. The guard sent him a photo of Roger, face swollen, one eye completely shut, arm in a cast. Ryan looked at the photo and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just emptiness. It still wasn't enough. The attacks continued. Roger was stabbed in the cafeteria 2 months into his sentence. Survived, but the wound became infected. He developed sepsis and nearly died. Then he was jumped in the exercise yard. Beaten unconscious. After the 3rd attack, prison officials moved him to protective custody, solitary confinement, 23 hours a day in a cell, 1 hour of supervised exercise. Living death. And still, Ryan felt hollow. Karen noticed. You're not sleeping. You barely eat. You're obsessing over him. I'm fine. You're not. You haven't been fine since the trial ended. She took his hand. Roger is suffering. He's in a cage, isolated, beaten. He'll die alone and miserable. That's what you wanted, isn't it? I wanted him erased. Unmade. I wanted his existence retroactively canceled so none of the children he hurt ever had to hurt in the first place. That's impossible. What happened, happened. All we can do is move forward. Ryan knew she was right. But knowing didn't make the rage go away. He threw himself back into work, taking on a new documentary about prison reform. It gave him an excuse to visit correctional facilities, to ask questions, to gather information about how one might get to an inmate in protective custody. Not to kill Roger. That would be too easy. But to make him suffer more. To find the psychological pressure points and exploit them. Ryan learned that inmates in solitary often deteriorated mentally. Hallucinations. Paranoia. Some went catatonic. Others lost the ability to speak. Good. Let Roger's mind eat itself. But Ryan wanted to accelerate the process. He arranged for letters to be sent to Roger. Not from him. That would be too obvious. But from fake supporters who'd then turn on him. Letters that would give hope, then snatch it away. He had accomplices send Roger photos of children with captions like, "Thinking of you," to trigger his obsession while knowing he could never act on it again. Cruel? Yes. But proportional to Roger's crimes? Barely. 6 months into Roger's sentence, the prison psychologist reported that Roger was showing signs of severe mental deterioration. He'd stopped eating, stopped speaking, just sat in his cell, staring at the wall. Ryan heard about it and felt the first stirring of something like satisfaction. Then, 9 months after his sentencing, Roger Mackenzie died. Not from violence. Not from disease. He simply gave up. The autopsy reported malnutrition and dehydration. Roger had refused food and water for 2 weeks. The prison staff had tried to intervene, but Roger had turned his face away, closed his eyes, and willed himself to death. Ryan received the news via email from his contact in the corrections system. He sat at his desk, reading the message twice to make sure he understood. Roger was dead. The monster was gone. He should feel relieved. Victorious. Instead, he felt cheated. Roger had chosen death. Had taken control one last time. Had escaped the suffering Ryan had wanted him to endure for decades. Ryan. Karen appeared in the doorway. Someone from the prison called. They said, "Is it true? Is he really dead?" "Yes." She sat down heavily. "How do you feel?" "I don't know." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Karen said, "We should tell Jamie. He's old enough to know his grandfather won't be around anymore." Jamie was 6 now. Old enough to remember that day, though they'd told him a sanitized version. Grandpa Roger had been sick. Had done something bad. Had gone away. They sat Jamie down that evening and told him that Grandpa Roger had died. Jamie processed this with the simple pragmatism of childhood. Is he in heaven? Ryan and Karen exchanged glances. "I don't think so, buddy," Ryan said finally. "I think people who hurt others don't get to go to the good place." "Where do they go?" "Nowhere. They just stop." Jamie seemed satisfied with this answer and went back to his toys. Later, in bed, Karen turned to Ryan. "Do you think it's really over now?" "The criminal case, yes. The civil suits from Roger's victims might take years. The investigation into his network is still ongoing. But for us? For Jamie, I think we can start healing." Ryan wanted to believe that. Wanted to let go of the rage that had consumed him for nearly a year. But a part of him would always carry it. Would always remember walking into Jamie's room and seeing his son unconscious, arranged like a doll for Roger's sick collection. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Some wrongs couldn't be made right. All you could do was make sure they never happened again. "I'm starting a foundation," Ryan said suddenly. "For victims of child exploitation. Therapy funding, legal support, education for parents on recognizing warning signs." Karen smiled, tears in her eyes. Using the settlement money from the civil suit against Roger's estate. Every penny. It's blood money anyway. Might as well use it to do some good. He'd hate that. Knowing his money is going to help the people he hurt. Good. Let him roll in his grave. They fell asleep holding each other, and for the first time in months, Ryan didn't dream of Roger's face. The foundation launched 6 months later. They called it Sarah's Light, in honor of Karen's mother. Within a year, they'd helped 30 families, provided therapy for 50 children, funded 3 separate investigations into suspected predators. 2 more members of Roger's network were arrested and convicted. Ryan continued making documentaries, but now he focused exclusively on exposing exploitation and helping victims. His reputation grew. Awards followed. But the real satisfaction came from the letters he received from parents whose children had been helped by Sarah's Light. Jamie thrived. The therapy worked. By age 8, he had only vague memories of that day. Mostly just remembered being sleepy and then waking up in the hospital. The trauma had been caught early enough to prevent lasting damage. Ryan counted that as the real victory. Not Roger's death. Not his conviction. Not even the dismantling of the network. But Jamie's laugh. His innocence preserved. His childhood reclaimed. That was worth everything. 3 years after Roger's death, Ryan received an unexpected letter. It was from Sally Gill, the woman who testified at Roger's trial about her abuse as a child. Dear Ryan, it began. I wanted to thank you for your courage in exposing Roger and everyone like him. Because of you, I finally felt brave enough to share my story publicly. I've written a book about my experience and the healing process. I hope it helps other survivors. She included a copy of the book. Ryan read it in one sitting, tears streaming down his face. Sally described the decades of shame and self-blame, the therapy, the struggle to trust people, but also the healing, the gradual realization that she wasn't broken, that what happened to her wasn't her fault. And at the end, she thanked Ryan again. You gave me my voice back, she wrote. You showed me that predators can be defeated, that standing up to them, no matter how powerful they seem, is possible. You saved your son, and in doing so, you helped save me too. Ryan set the book down and looked at the photo on his desk, Jamie, now 7, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. He thought about all the children Roger had hurt over 45 years, all the lives damaged, all the families destroyed, and he thought about the ones they'd saved. The investigations Sarah's Light had funded that stopped predators before they could hurt anyone. The therapy that helped victims heal. The education programs that taught parents to recognize warning signs. Roger McKenzie had left a wake of destruction. But from that destruction, something good had grown. It wasn't redemption. There was no redemption for Roger's crimes. But it was purpose, meaning, a reason for all the pain. Ryan's phone buzzed. Karen, texting. Jamie's soccer game in an hour. Don't forget. He smiled and typed back. On my way. As he drove to the soccer field, Ryan caught sight of his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man looking back was older, harder, scarred by everything he'd seen and done, but also stronger, more focused. He'd gone to war with a monster and won. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but decisively. And in the end, that's what mattered. Roger McKenzie was dead and gone. His network was shattered. His victims were healing. And Ryan Daniel had protected his son. Mission accomplished. At the soccer field, Jamie spotted him and waved enthusiastically from the bench. Ryan waved back, settling into the bleachers next to Karen. He scored 2 goals last game, she whispered proudly. That's my boy. They watched Jamie run onto the field, shouting encouragement with the other parents. Normal. Mundane. Perfect. This was what Ryan had fought for. Not revenge. Not justice in some abstract sense. But this. The simple joy of watching his son play soccer on a Saturday afternoon. Roger had tried to steal it, and Ryan had taken it back. Later, after the game, which Jamie's team won 4-2, they went for ice cream. Jamie chattered about school, about his friends, about the new video game he wanted. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful, ordinary, priceless kid stuff. As Ryan listened to his son's excited rambling, he realized something. He'd let go of the rage. Not entirely. Some wounds never fully healed. Some scars stayed forever. But the consuming anger that had driven him for so long had finally burned out, leaving something different in its place. Peace. Hard won. Blood-bought. But real. Roger McKenzie had tried to destroy Ryan's family. Instead, he'd made them stronger. That was the real victory. Not the trial. Not the conviction. Not even Roger's death. But this moment. Ice cream dripping down Jamie's chin. Karen's hand in his. Laughter and love and life continuing despite everything. Roger was gone. They remained. And they were okay. Better than okay. They were thriving. Ryan looked at his family and smiled. The war was over. They'd won. And now, finally, they could live. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.